This is Ma'am Jill Irish Trinidad, and today we will discuss about factoring perfect square trinomial. So simulan natin. Ano ba yung sinasabing perfect square trinomial? So let's check. A trinomial is a perfect square when? Kailan siya nagiging perfect square trinomial? Two of the terms, the first and the last terms, are perfect squares. And both are positive dapat. Okay? Two of the terms are perfect squares and both are positive. Naaral na natin nung ating nakaraang video kung ano yung perfect square, ha? And then, second, the third term, usually yung middle term natin, is twice the product of the square root of the first and the last. Pag kinuha mo yung square root ng first at saka yung last at pinag-multiply mo sila times 2, kasi twice, dapat yung middle term yon. Okay? Yun yung magiging basihan natin para masabi na siya ay perfect square trinomial. Unlike sa dating video, this time it must be a trinomial. Ibig sabihin, there must be 3 terms. Okay? So, how do we factor perfect square trinomial? Ganito po yung process. First, you get the square roots of the first and the last term. So, you get the square root. Halimbawa, yung a squared, square root ay a. Yung b squared, ang square root ay b. And then, next is copy, express them as a square of a binomial following the sign of the middle term. So, you copy the square root a and the square root b. And then, following the sign of the middle term, it's positive, kaya plus din to. And then, express them as square. Okay? So, kung mapapansin mo, ang a, di ba, yung a squared plus 2ab plus b squared at a squared minus 2ab plus b squared, pares lang. Ang pinagkaiba lang nila isang plus, isang minus. Then, pansinin ko anong nangyari sa ating factor. Dahil ito ay positive, plus to. Dahil ito ay negative, minus to. So, take note we are following the sign of the second term. Alright? So, mas may course with an example. So let's have this. Determine whether x squared minus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square trinomial, and if yes, factor the trinomial. Check daw muna natin kung perfect square trinomial siya. Pag yes, fa-factor natin. Okay, let's start. So here is the trinomial. X squared minus 6x plus 9. So let's do this. Check muna natin yung first term. Is this a perfect square? Paano nga ulit po malalaman kung perfect square? Kapag variable po, dapat ang exponent ay divisible by 2. At kapag number naman, dapat merong number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili, siya yung sagot. Okay, so let's check. X squared. Now, is this a perfect square? Yes, kasi we can divide 2 by 2. O, what is the square root? O, pag yung kuha ng square root, you copy the variable x, and then you divide the exponent by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Therefore, we have x raised to 1 or simply x. Next, is the third term a perfect square? Yes. What is the square root? The square root, think of a number that when you multiply to itself will be 9. So, that is 3 kasi 3 times 3 is 9. And then, yung sinabi sa rule, dapat positive to. Dapat positive yung third term. Then, dalawang check na tayo. Now, let's do twice. So, always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. So, we have 2 times the first square root times the second square root. Let us check. 2 times x is 2x. Times 3 is 6x. Kung nahihirapan, multiply mo muna yung mga numbers. 2 times 3, that is 6. Times x, so that is 6x. Now, nagmatch ba yung 6x dito sa second term? Nagmatch? Parehas ba? Yes. So, that is check. Now, dahil tatlong check yan, dahil sumwak siya sa tatlong kondisyon, then this is a perfect square trinomial. And kung yan ay perfect square trinomial, when we factor it out, copy the first square root, follow the sign of the second term, and copy the second square root and make it a square. So, the factor is x minus 3 squared. Ulit copy x, yung unang square root, then follow the sign of the second term, and then copy the second square root, 3, and then express that as square. Kaya siya 2x. Alright, therefore we can say that the trinomial is a perfect square trinomial and the factors are x minus 3 squared. Minus because the sign of the middle term is negative. Alright, let's example. Determine whether 4x to the 4 plus 36x squared plus 81 is a perfect square trinomial. And if yes, factor the trinomial. So same procedure tayo. This is the given. First term, 4x to the 4th. Is this a perfect square? Yes. What is the square root? Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of x to the 4th is x squared. Ma'am, ulit. Anong square root ng 4? 2. Anong square root ng x to the 4th? X squared. Paano po naging x squared? Diba, you divide only the exponent by 2. So, you copy x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay? Next, third term tayo. Positive ba? Yes. Perfect square ba? Yes. What is the square root? 9 times 9 is 81. Therefore, the square root of 81 is 9. Okay. Now, third step. Always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 9 is 36. Times x squared is 36x squared. Match ba? Yes. Dahil match siya, this is a perfect square trinomial. And what will be our factor? O, diba? Copy the first square root, follow the sign, and copy the second square root, and then make it a square. Therefore, the factor is 2x squared plus 9 squared. Ulit, copy the first square root, follow the sign, copy the second square root, and then make it a square. So, the trinomial is a perfect square trinomial, and the factor is 2x squared plus 9 squared. Okay. Our third example. Ganun ulit, determine whether this one is a perfect square trinomial and factor it. So, the given, check first. Is the first term a perfect square? Yes, kasi nadi-divide siya by 2 eh. What is the square root? That is x cubed. Paano naging x cubed? Copy the variable x, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay, next. 64. 64 is a perfect square? Yes. Is this positive? Yes. So this is a perfect square now. What is the square root of 64? Correct. That is 8 because 8 times 8 is 64. Okay, after that, always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. So, 2 times 8 is 16. 16 times x cubed is 16x cubed. Nagmatch ba dun sa second term? 16x cubed eh. Ito ay 8x cubed. Hindi nagmatch. No. Dahil no ang sagot, ibig sabihin, this is not a perfect square trinomial. So, hindi na natin siya mapa-factor. We cannot factor it out kasi hindi siya perfect square trinomial. And so, we cannot get the factor because the middle term must be 16x cubed. 8x cubed siya. Okay? So, the trinomial is not a perfect square trinomial because the middle term is not equal to 16x cubed. I hope gets po yan. The fourth example. Determine whether x squared plus 10x minus 25 is a perfect square trinomial and factor it out. Same procedure. Here's the given. Is the first term a perfect square? Yes. And the square root is x. That's right. Is the second term a perfect square? Yes. But is it plus? Is it positive? No. Di ba sabi kanina sa rule, dapat yung third term ay positive. Eh dahil hindi siya positive, no na ulit. Therefore, we cannot proceed anymore. This is already not a perfect square trinomial. Wag mo na ituloy kasi hindi ka rin naman aabot. So, ibig sabihin, this is not a perfect square trinomial because the last term must be positive. Kaya hindi natin siya ma-factor out. So, the trinomial is not a perfect square trinomial because the last term is negative. Okay. I have another example. Determine whether x squared minus 24xy plus 144y squared is a perfect square trinomial. And if yes, factor the trinomial. Let's have this. Ito yung given natin. Let's start. Is x squared a perfect square? Yes. What is the square root? X. Okay. Next, is the last term a perfect square? Yes. Is it positive? Yes. Okay, so what is the square root? Alright, that is 12y squared kasi 12 times 12 is 144 and y times y is y squared. Alright, so next is always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. So 2 times 12 is 24. 24 times x is 24x. 24x times y is 24xy. Match ba? Yes. Okay, then we can proceed. How do we get the factor? Remember, this is a perfect square trinomial. So always copy the first square root x, copy the sign of the second term, and copy the second square root 12y and make them a square. So this is our factor. Copy the first square root x, copy the operation or the sign of the second term minus, and then copy the second square root 12y and then express as a square. Okay, so the trinomial is a perfect square trinomial and the factor is x minus 12y squared because the sign of the middle term is negative. Okay, mukhang so let's have an example, which is a word problem. How long is one side of a square piece of cloth if its area is this one? Ala, ma'am, area lang binigay, walang length, walang width. Wala na, kasi siya naman daw ay square piece of cloth. So square is a kind of rectangle. Let us try this out. Let A be the area of a square piece of cloth. The area. We know that the area of a square is S squared. Side squared. Okay, sana naaalala yung formula ng area ng square. That area is equal to S squared. Okay, let us substitute. So, ang area is 9c squared plus 24c plus 16, which is equal daw to S squared. Okay, now, given this one, gamitin natin yung rule kanina, is this a perfect square? Yes. And what is the square root? Okay, that's 3c. Sunod, is 16 a perfect square? Yes. Is it a plus? Yes. And what is the square root? 4. And then always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. 2 times 3 6 times 4, 24 times c, 24c. Match? Yes. Therefore, it is a perfect square trinomial. And with that, we can say that the factor is, diba, the first square root, copy the sign of the second term, plus, and then the second square root, 4, and then express as square. So, ibig sabihin, this one is expressed as 3c plus 4. Ulit, copy the first square root, copy the sign, copy the second square root, and then express as square. Okay, dahil this is equivalent to S squared, what is the value of the side? S squared is equal to 3c plus 4 squared. O, diba? Therefore, one side is 3c plus 4. Okay, thus, one side of the square is 3c plus 4 centimeter long. Ma'am, paano nangyari? O, cancel mo yung square. Then, S is equal to 3c plus 4. Okay? Let's have the last example. How much is a kilogram of lanzones if you paid m squared plus 20m plus 100 pesos for m plus 10 kilograms? Okay, let's have this. Let the total cost, di ba pag nakukuha tayo ng total cost, that is always the number of kilograms times magkano per kilogram. Number of kilograms times cost per kilogram. Okay, so given, ito yung ating given na amount. So, m squared plus 20m plus 100. Let us factor it out. Is this a perfect square? Yes. What is the square root? M. Next, is this a perfect square? Yes. Is it positive? Yes. What is the square root? 10. Then, always 2 times the first square root times the second square root. So 2 times 10 is 20 times m, that's 20m. Match. Therefore, we can say that m squared plus 20m plus 100 is equal to m plus 10 squared. Ibig sabihin, m plus 10 times m plus 10. Okay? So, sabi dun sa given, m plus 10 daw yung kilograms. Ito daw yung kilograms. Magkano na ngayon yung cost per kilogram? Okay. So, the cost per kilogram will be m plus 10 din kasi m squared plus 20m plus 100 is equal to m plus 10 kilograms times m plus 10 pesos per kilogram. Kasi square yan eh. Square. So, ibig sabihin, dalawang m plus 10 yan. Okay? So, yung unang m plus 10 para sa kilograms, na given. Yung pangalawang m plus 10 ay para sa amount per kilogram. Okay, so we can say that a kilogram of lanzones cost m plus 10 pesos. May tanong po? I hope wala namang tanong. Kung wala nang tanong, thank you so much and have a nice day. Bye-bye!